country. With us now to discuss these efforts, Congressman Steve Southerland of Florida, who chairs the Republican Study Committee's Anti-Poverty Initiative, and Chris Van Hollen of Maryland, ranking member of the House Budget Committee. Congressman, welcome to Fox News Sunday. Good to have you back again.
Thank you, John.
Let's start with you, Congressman Southerland. This was all done on the anniversary of Lyndon Johnson's declaration of the war on poverty. What do you think of this idea of creating these 20 promise zones across the country, the first 5 of which were unveiled on Thursday?
Well, the President, I believe this is the program he made reference to in his State of the Union a year ago. So there doesn't seem to be much of an urgency here since it's 13 months after he first mentioned it. But look, the devil's in the details. There wasn't a lot of details that came out. But as you know, President Reagan had the enterprise zones that if it's patterned after that, that encouraged school choice. I do believe in tax incentives in order to move the economy forward. And so we're going to be patient. We're going to look at what the President is offering. And but again, the devil is in the details.
Congressman Van Hollen, I think that many people were appreciative of the idea of these promise zones. Senator Ted Cruz, though, came out and said all of America needs to be a promise zone with reduced barriers to small businesses creating private sector jobs. Do you agree or disagree with the premise that the best way out of poverty is to have a job, and the best way to create jobs is to create a playing field in which small businesses can flourish?
Oh, John, there's no doubt about it. That the best way to pull people out of poverty is to get the economy kicked into full gear, and all the efforts that go into that. So, for example, I believe we've got to reinvest in our infrastructure. You've got huge needs in terms of rebuilding our infrastructure, modernizing it for the 21st century, and you've got a lot of people unemployed in the construction area. So that's a win-win. We'd like to work with our colleagues to do it. But there's also a very important role to play in trying to harness resources to focus on places in greatest needs. We also need to make sure more people can share in prosperity. That's why we should increase the minimum wage, which hasn't been raised for a long time. So the President's promise zones are a part of an overall strategy to try and get the economy going and have more broadly shared prosperity.
But there is a fundamental difference in ideology, though, of how to do this. Congressman Southerland, you said, looking back on Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty, it has failed and failed miserably. Do you keep putting more money into existing programs? Or do you, as Senator Marco Rubio suggested earlier this week, fundamentally reform everything, take that big pot of money that the federal government has, and give that to the states to administer in innovative ways? They're the ones on the ground who know what needs to be done.
John, I think you have to look at the indicators, the fundamentals of these programs. Look at what causes poverty. We know, okay, that two-parent families is a child's greatest opportunity to avoid poverty. We know that a good quality education with daily parent involvement, great choice, reduces poverty. We know that a good job, 90 of the people that have a job, okay, only 3% are in poverty. So if you have a job in this country, 97% chance you're not going to be in poverty. And so therefore, I think there's a better way, okay? And if you look at the last 50 years, if you look at those fundamentals, I think it's long past time to change direction.
Well, let me just say, I mean, there's this narrative out there that the war on poverty has failed. The reality is we still have too many Americans in poverty.
It's about the same number as 1960.
But the reality is that people are using a lot of misleading figures in this effort. The Council of Economic Advisors just released the report showing that we have cut poverty by 1/3 since 1967. The numbers
in terms of percentage.
Well, that's the number of people as a percentage of the population in poverty. Right. After all, I mean, our country has grown by 125 million people. So,
which is
percentage of well, the point they've been making is that has not succeeded because they ignore the benefits of some of the programs we've had. The Earned Income Tax Credit. I hope nobody would deny that has helped people get out of poverty. The food stamp program, which Steve and his colleagues are trying to cut. They want to cut 4 million people off of food stamps, even though we just had a cut in November. So it's hard to listen to our colleagues on one hand, saying they want to fight the war on poverty, when they're taking all these initiatives to throw more people into poverty.
What do you think of Senator Rubio's proposal to do away with the Earned Income Tax Credit, that lump sum payment that people get at the end of the year, and replace it with a federal wage enhancement?
I think the Earned Income Tax Credit has helped. In fact, I don't just think, it's a fact. It has helped lift people out of poverty. So I would be opposed to that. That has been a bipartisan idea. Republicans and Democrats joined together to pass the Earned Income Tax Credit to reward work, to say to people, if you work hard, you're at least going to earn an income that is above the poverty level. So that's a very important effort, as are these others. So we should not use numbers that say we're not winning the war on poverty because we don't count these programs. We're not winning because we still have 47 million Americans in poverty, but let's not ignore the progress that has been made.
Congressman Southerland, you're getting the stuffing beaten out of you in Florida's 2nd Congressional District over your proposal to require work for people to have food stamps. But the bigger part of that, though, is the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program was probably one of the most successful programs that this country Congress has ever come out with. And there were calls from Republicans to apply that more broadly across the board in anti-poverty programs.
Right.
Do you agree?
Well, look, we literally patterned, it's ironic that we patterned our bill as it applies to able-bodied individuals that are of working age, mentally, physically, psychologically able to work.
Like the famous surfer that we highlighted.
Yeah, absolutely, that's eating lobster in California. Excluded children, excluded the disabled, excluding seniors, that they work, train for work, look for work, or volunteer. And I think that that they be productive. I think that over 80% of America agrees with that premise. So I think it makes sense, but it only applies, again, to the able-bodied individuals without dependents.
Is that such a horrible idea?
Well, first of all, Steve's ignoring the whole other part of their proposal. Their proposal cuts $40 billion out of the food and nutrition programs on top of the cuts in November. More than half the households there are working households with kids or households with seniors who are not expected to work. And so you're actually sending a very bad message about work when you're actually cutting food support for families that are working, which goes to the categorical eligibility
But in his particular
piece.
proposal, though, that he's getting beaten rather severely about, he's saying able-bodied people who are able.
Well, there's one that says you have to have training programs, which is fine, except for this proposal also cuts resources for training programs in the states. At the same time, you've got three people looking for every one job in this country. John?
Quick response.
Yeah, first of all, look, Chris is pretty good with numbers, okay, he's a numbers guy, but there are a couple numbers that I think are glaring. First, since this president took office, 6.7 million Americans have entered into poverty. We know that 45% of single mothers live in poverty. And so therefore, why we are trying to push forth policies that are just going to add to those numbers? If you look at the facts of this administration, we can do better. We must do better.
Let me move on.
We can always do better, but it is also a fact that more than 8 million jobs have been created over the last 46 months. Is it enough? No. You still have 3 people, as I said, looking for every job, and so we should not be cutting off extended unemployment benefits, for example.
On that point, let's listen to what Senator Harry Reid said about the Republican position on unemployment insurance extension on Thursday.
You have to give them credit. They're doing their best to divert attention away from this issue. This is opposition, and it's cold-hearted to extending unemployment benefits. It's a very tough position to defend.
Correction, that was Wednesday. But Congressman Van Hollen, are Republicans cold-hearted? All they want to do is they want to pay for this unemployment insurance extension.
No, that's not the case. A lot of people were still opposed to it. We put forward a proposal in the House before we took the winter break to pay for it by cutting excessive ag subsidies. We were denied an opportunity to even vote on that measure. The reality is, you listen to people like Rand Paul, they take the insulting position that these people are just sitting back taking an unemployment compensation check when they're required to look for work.
If he pays for it, and this offer to extend to 31 weeks and pay for it in 2024, is that a real offer, Congressman?
Well, look, I think you have to look at what's going on in states like North Carolina. I mean, obviously last July, North Carolina's emergency unemployment ended. Emergency unemployment, it ended. And since then, they've created 35,000 jobs, and unemployment rate has gone from 8.9 to 7.4. So let's learn from that. Okay, let's learn how we could apply that on a more broader scale, because the Republicans believe we've got to get this economy moving, because when you get the economy moving, investors job creators are going to do what they do best.
I think everybody agrees we've got to get the economy moving. It's just a difference on how to get there. We've got to leave it there with Congressman.